All right, let's tackle this. I give them carrots, but sometimes I try other things and they tend to mold. So wheat bran and water gel crystals would be just fine. Don't look at water gel crystals as a solution to the mold problem, because you could still potentially have a mold issue. When it comes to moisture sources for mealworms, it's about the volume of moisture you put in for the mealworms that are in that tray, because it's going to vary, right? So let's take an example of, we've got a tray here with some mealworms in it. We have a tray down here with mealworms in it, and we have beetles over there. If you put too much in that tray, whether it's water gel crystal, potatoes, anything, if you put too much in that tray for the mealworms to consume within 24 to 48 hours, you're going to get mold, okay? The water gel crystals are less likely to mold because they'll just dry up, right? That moisture is going to leave, they'll just dry up, and then they turn back into their hard, solid state. But that becomes problematic from a sifting, harvesting perspective. I don't like that about the water gel crystals, and so I always try to underdose those trays rather than give them too much of the moisture content, which might be what you're running into here. So let's take a look at an example of what I mean. So in this tray here, I'm actually testing the bokashi in this tray, so that's why you see pieces of food in here. But from a testing perspective, or an explanation perspective, I have a handful of water gel crystals, and I throw them in. That's it. Like, that's all I'm going to put in that tray for right now, because I want them to consume that before it just dries up. And so if I double dose, if I throw another handful in of the water gel crystal, it's not technically going to hurt the tray, but it's wasteful because it's going to dry up faster than they can eat it. And then in the case of anything from a food perspective, if you were to put in too many potatoes, if you were to put in too many carrots, they're going to dry up or potentially mold depending on what substrate you use, what your percent humidity is, all that stuff. But the more you put in, if they can't consume it within 24 hours, put less in. That's the solution, right? Don't look at water gel crystals as the key here. Look at it more from the perspective of feed them less moisture, which feels kind of wrong, right? Like, you want them to be well hydrated, but you want to also balance the mold issue, right? The other thing is, in the tray you just looked at, it's a lot of frass. I need to hydrate that tray, or not hydrate, I need to give it some wheat bran to get back into motion there. But like, this tray here has wheat bran in it. If you're using oats or oat flour or some kind of oat, oats will absorb that moisture and hold it and lock it in, and they tend to mold a lot easier. And so wheat bran could also be a potential option, because anybody that uses oats is going to be much more prone to that moisture issue and the mold issue. If you're using closed containers, that's another thing to take a look at here. These are open, right? And even the stacked ones down below, plenty of ventilation so that the moisture gets out. If you're in a situation where you have to use a lid, which is totally fine, you just have to manage it differently. Again, don't put as much moisture in, and it's going to hold that moisture. So if you usually feed 3 carrots, and those are gone within 24 hours, and then you feed the equivalent weight of cucumbers. Cucumbers have a lot more moisture in them, right? And so you're going to need to feed less of that because there's more water in that item. So it just depends on, again, how many larvae are in there, what your brand or what your substrate source is, as well as the food that you're using to give them, or the water gel crystal, whatever it is. You need to be looking at it more from the perspective of, give them that food that they can eat within a day. If you're giving them too much, start scaling it back. Then think about water gel crystals.